Well, hello, everyone. Today's show is, and I didn't put a banner, basically, what we're doing today is talking about how you can buy a house when your spouse doesn't have the perfect credit or maybe is an I-10 instead of, American citizen or permanent resident alien, but doesn't have the card or whatever the reason is, or they have bad credit. They don't, certain things. How can you buy a house with your spouse not necessarily being on the loan? And the reason it's such a big deal is we're in California. It's not anything other than this. California is a community property state. If you do any type of government loans, your spouse not your income, but the spouse's debts have to be used against you when you're purchasing. If you're doing conventional, Fannie, Freddie, they don't. So that's what you run into. So we had a gentleman who his wife had an ITN number. He wanted to buy a house, FHA. So we had to have the credit run under the ITN number to see if there was anything on there. And he was able to purchase it going FHA and just using there was no debts or anything. So it didn't hurt him. But what happens is sometimes people have bad credit and their spouse does, and they still have debts, right? Student loan debts, or they have other debts. If it's a debt that they're paying on, not a collection account, but a debt that they're paying on, those debts have to be used against them while they're buying. And this is the same. So I'm going to go off here, but all right, say that you're married and you want to buy a house, but your partner is not real great on one or two things and it's going to take too long to fix it. You can do it. The other time this comes into play is when people are getting divorced and they think they're legally separated. What I mean by that is legally separated means that you went to court and you legally separated, not that my attorney told me the moment I moved out of the house, I'm separated legally. That is true. But under real estate law and how we do real estate, it's not true that way, how we look at it. So we have to use, again, so say you're a vet and you want to buy a house and you're going through divorce. First of all, in California, your spouse has to sign off on that. It's either side, whichever spouse it is. Each person has to sign off on the other person buying a new home as sole and separate property. That's the first thing. The second thing, if they're going VA or FHA, the debts that you're leaving that spouse, their debts have to be used against you also. So it's really hard when you're going through a divorce to buy a house unless you're doing it conventional.
Yeah.
Right. But even going conventional, they still have to sign off on you purchasing that house. And a lot of times people are like, what? I don't get it. Why does that have to happen? I'm sorry. Don't yell at us. It's community property state. That's California. Yeah. It's other community property states the same way. But if it's not a community property state, you don't have to. It's totally different. But in California, so there's ways to buy property being married and not having your other spouse on. I had a guy call me. He's like, I want to buy a house and I don't want my wife to know about it. That's not going to happen in California.
That sounds like you might be getting divorced.
Right. Soon, huh? But exactly. But what I tell people, if you're going through a divorce and you want to buy a property and everybody's amicable about it right now, once you get into contract, the first thing you do is have them sign that grant deed saying that that's sole and separate property. Because sometimes people going through the process 30 days from now, as it gets closer, the other spouse is not agreeable anymore because something else came up and now they know how to put your feet to the fire or whatever. And then they go, okay, I'm not signing this unless you give me money. I had one pop up where I told the guy to do it from the beginning. Oh, no, it'll be fine. Finally found her and she wanted $5,000 to sign.
And she probably got $5,000, huh?
No, they backed out of the contract because he said he's not going to pay that person. It's, most times when you go through a divorce, it's not amicable. Somebody's not happy about it.
Yeah. I've heard of a few that are, where everything gets split up. Anyway, I know we got.
I don't want to get into that whole, but basically, yes, you can buy a property if your spouse currently that you're living with and married to that you want to buy a property, but they don't have great credit. There's ways to do it by yourself.
Yeah, and so a lot of times when I'm meeting with new clients, if they don't have a lender, obviously you're talking to them, you're finding these things out. But sometimes people ask me these questions, and that's why I wanted to bring it up because, I had somebody who was they were a hot lead, called me off a sign. And the first thing they asked me was, hey, I would, if we buy this house, does my husband have to be on the loan? And I was like, That's something we should talk about, because I'm sure that's something you hear. Like I said, I don't hear it as much, not being a lender, but.
All right. So here I had another one. Lady called, and I had Amy, one of my assistants, talk to her ahead of time. And she's like, yeah, she doesn't want her husband to be on the loan on the house she's buying because she's getting the down payment from her mom, which is her inheritance. And I'm like, well, didn't you tell her we're in California? It's community property state. And I've heard scenarios where that, if you had property previously before you get married, unless it's in a prenup and your spouse goes on these properties later, like the water, do certain things, and they're no longer community property. Don't listen to my word. Talk to your attorney about this. I had a prenup when I got remarried. My wife had one. I made sure we both did, because if it didn't work out, I wanted her to have her stuff and I wanted to have my stuff. And that's what you should be doing. You should set it up ahead of time the way you want to do it, so there's no problems. And so, yes, things happen. People ask all the time, can I buy this without my spouse on it, this and that? I don't know why, but that's what they do. But I have to explain to them, certain times you can, but the spouse has to sign off on it. So if she wanted to buy that house with her mom because she's given her inheritance to buy that house and it's her house, he has to sign off on it. Well, the problem is he had the income.
Gotcha.
Right. Well, if he's going to be on there for the income and he's going to be, that's going to be a debt against him. I think he wants to be part of that house.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he's not going to sign off on that.
Yeah. No kidding.
Yeah. And it's just there's ways to do stuff, and it's all got to be above board, period. That's all I want to get at. So yes, I hope we didn't get off a totally different tangent, but yes, you can buy a house without, and you buy it in your name and the spouse is on title. And that's what we did with the person with the ITN. The person is going to be on title. So they get the benefit of owning the property, but not being on the mortgage.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing, right? We do that a lot where people are buying properties and the spouse can't be on, or he, I don't know whether he or she or them, him, whatever. I don't care where your pronouns land. It doesn't matter. I'm just saying, yes, if you're married and you want to, and one doesn't have a good credit or some other issue, you can still buy and we can still put them on title.
Yeah. And, obviously, ideally, if you have the time, Ed can set you up with a plan of how to repair that credit. But in this market, there's a lot of people that had investment properties, rentals, that are selling them because this is a seller's market. And so in that case, if you get a 60-day notice and it's not something you can repair in 60 days, or really actually like 15 days, because you need to be searching and shopping, right? Then that's going to be a scenario where they could work through that.
Yeah, but we're still doing rapid rescores once people get in a contract, even to make it better. I did that with the one I was telling you about. I just closed today. We took his FICO score from 700 to 760, and it was a huge difference in the rate for the program he was doing.
Awesome.
And even though you might have a 700 and you can go conventional, I still want to work on your credit. I still want to get it better so that you can get a better rate, because 760 on a $400,000 loan is a better rate than a 700 FICO score or a 720 FICO score. On FHA, it doesn't. 680 is good enough, but I still look to see if there's any better we can get it if we go over that. But from 620 to 680 is a totally different thing on FHA and VA.
Yeah.
And because a lot of the investors I deal with, they were like, we're going down to 620 on conventional. I'm like, why? I can't price it out. What I mean by that is when we go in and we put in the information, single family home, FICO scores this, down payments this, but all that kind of stuff, it comes back and it tells me what the rate is. Okay. And it gives me a range from here to here. The middle is par, where there's no cost, and then it goes the other way where there's cost, so you can buy the rate down. Well, it gets to a point where 2 points is just ridiculous. I don't like doing that, especially when we're going to be refinancing people in a year to 2 years from now, when we drop back down. And then it goes the opposite way where there's rebate to pay for it. Well, the problem is if you're a 620 trying to go conventional right now, the highest rate I can get is still going to cost me $15,000 to get you that rate.
Yeah.
But if you are 760, now you're at, in this market, we'll just say 4.5 to 4.875. Don't know, depending on the day and what's going on. Right? Who's opening their mouth now?
Yeah.
And I mean that because when the Fed talks and says they're going to do this, that changes the market in a second, and it's so fast to go away and so slow to come back. And that, and people don't understand that. The volatility in this market is huge. So don't be surprised if you were told 4.25% a month ago, and now you're getting 4.875 to 5% because the market changed.
And what kind of rate locks are you able to do right now?
Well, you can do 30 to 45 days, but the problem is the longer the lock is, the more of a hit it is to the cost. So they add it on. So I want to lock for 30 days or less, because that's the best pricing. Best pricing is actually 15 days, but we still have people selling their houses, doing other stuff, and you can't really close that fast. We can close a purchase in 9 days if there's no appraisal needed. If there's appraisal needed, just add the time for that. If it takes a week to get the appraisal, so you're talking 12 days, it's fast. I mean, but we've been getting less and less waivers. I don't know if you know what I mean by that. So we were getting, for a period of time there, waivers, which means you didn't have to have an appraisal. Most of the time when you're doing 20% down, we were getting waivers or more than that all the time with Fannie and Freddie. Mm-hmm. Right now we're not. And it's just getting harder and harder. I think they're afraid, even though we all know there's no bubble, they're still very conservative about potentially that if interest rates keep going up, things will slow down to a normal pace, 4 or 5% appreciation, which isn't a bad thing, but it'll take people from 24 offers down to 14 offers, or 14 offers down to 4 offers, which is not a bad thing. So people can start getting the houses they want. Yeah.
I'll just say for the really qualified buyers, it's better. It's it's a tough market out there, but
it's a tough market. I'm just kidding. This is our norm. When's it going to go back to normal? This is the normal market. It's going to be here like this for a while. Even with rates going up, it will slow things down to a certain point, but not stop. People still need to rent, still needs to buy. What it's going to do is eventually price people out of the market that they can't afford. If you're in that lower area where you're trying to get into a certain price point and you barely are making it, once the rate goes up a quarter or a half, you're out.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's just what it's doing right now. So you might have to add somebody else on your loan to get that house. And that's not a bad thing to do.
Yeah. Like I said, that sounds like another show right there, because I have a scenario we could talk about.
All right. Well, we'll do another show, because we do them Tuesdays and Thursdays usually, unless something came up.
Yeah.
All right. And this is, I want to thank everybody for being here, and I appreciate you showing up today, and everybody else for listening.
Thanks so much, Ed.
All right. Everybody.